The national finals certainly were unexpected. We got to talk about that Vito Arujau match, the ups and downs of Penn State, the utter dominance of Mason Paris, and Yianni becoming a 4-time champ. Oh, and what about Donald Trump even showing up? And if you stick around till the end, I'll even tell you who I think should win the Hodge Trophy. But let's get to the first weight. And Austin O'Connor kicked off the night with a victory for the Tar Heels, his second NCAA title at 157 pounds this time. His previous was at 149. He knocked off Levi Haynes in a 6-2 decision. After the bout, he ended up doing a backflip, and I think the thing about Austin O'Connor, just to mention, this was like probably some of the most excitement we've seen out of him was this backflip. He just seemed excited and happy to win. I compare him a lot to Ryan Deacon in the fact that like he doesn't do anything that's like a crazy, overly like a lot of finesse to it. He's just consistent with his wins, being able to score takedowns and score points. And then we got into 165 pounds. In the 165 pounds bout was where things got super interesting because Carr and O'Toole had faced off 2 previous times in the season, but this time, finally, Keegan O'Toole was able to get things done. He won a 8-2 decision over David Carr with a takedown, and he scored back points, I think, towards the end there. Just unbelievable. I think this is, no, that's not exactly where it was. That's where it was at the end there, whenever he was able to score back points to come out on top. You know, I talked with Zach of Stalemates, and one of the things that he said was, you know, you may take David Carr in 2 matches, but these 2 wrestled 3 times. Are you really going to decide against Keegan O'Toole? Like, come on. David Carr is the champ, and I really enjoyed seeing him after the match, like cheering on his teammates as well as his friends in Aaron Brooks. And, you know, Keegan O'Toole with this becomes the reigning champion yet again, takes the crown, even with a couple of bumps in the road. And he is one of the few guys to actually defend his title at the weight. Part of that starts with taking care of yourself and your body as a whole. And the best way to do that on a daily basis is using Defense Soap products. You know, I've been recommending them all season long as a sponsor of this channel because their products work. They help keep wrestlers' skin clean, and the way they do it without any harsh chemicals is what really sticks out to me, because when you feel clean, you just feel better all around. Stop using hygienic products that aren't good for your skin. Instead, use things like Defense Soap's body wash, bar soap, and body wipes. Go to defensesoap.com to feel the difference for yourself today. Thanks to Defense Soap for sponsoring this video and being a fantastic advertising sponsor throughout this entire college wrestling season. Then going into 174 and 184, I wasn't expecting anything crazy, honestly, that Sirachi and Brooks were probably going to get victories. But what Sirachi did here, after being up 2-0 and near the end of the first period, he tossed Mikey Labriola to his back and stuck him to win a national title, his 3rd NCAA title. And that's one of the things that was interesting throughout this night is we saw the ups and downs of Penn State. This was the up. Sirachi winning his 3rd title, because then at the next weight, Aaron Brooks won his 3rd NCAA title. They became 3-time NCAA champions for Penn State, which is incredible. Penn State has reigned dominant at the 184 pounds weight class specifically, but then they were going to need a 3rd NCAA title to have another 3-timer at 133. I'll talk about that when I get to it in a bit, but if they claimed that 3rd one, they actually would have been tied for the school with the 2nd most 3-time NCAA wrestling champions. Oklahoma State is number 1 with 15. Iowa is 2nd with 7. Now Penn State is 3rd still with 6, which is darn impressive considering a lot of those came within the past 10 years. That led to the 197 pounds bout with Nino Bonacorsi and Tanner Sloan. And Tanner Sloan wrestled tough. He wrestled smart. He was a strong wrestler and competitor, but Nino Bonacorsi just ultimately was too much for him. This was the takedown that sealed the deal for him. It was within a couple of points, like with it going into that last period, but Nino Bonacorsi, as I predicted, just wanted it more. Now, granted, like I say as I predicted, as if I predicted everything right. Trust me, I did not. I did not predict that this was going to happen. What I can predict is that you're going to hit that subscribe button right now, because we hit the goal of gaining 1,000 subscribers in the past 2 days. Let's see if we can bump that up and get to 2,000 subscribers. I know we can do it with all of you watching this video. Now, this was historic for Pitt because it was the 6th Pitt wrestler to complete a perfect season with a national title, which honestly is pretty shocking to me. I didn't realize there were this many guys to do it. The last guy to do it was Keith Gavin, head coach of Penn, or of Pitt, and that was their last NCAA champion as well. That was a theme carried throughout this night as well, was undefeated wrestlers winning national titles. At this point, Austin O'Connor did it, Carter Sirachi did it, and now Nino Bonacorsi did it. And then at the next weight, at 285 pounds, Mason Parris added to that with his victory over Greg Kirkfleet. And I'll tell you what, what was this final score end up? It ended up being 5-1 over Greg Kirkfleet. And Mason Parris, shout out to him for having such a phenomenal tournament. He was in the talks to be a Hodge Trophy winner. I'll give you my thoughts about that in just a little bit, but he dominated his way through the tournament with that tech fall over Anthony Cassiope in the semifinals, and then just utterly riding out and beating Greg Kirkfleet. He controlled him the entire match. This was his season. I'm happy to see him get that victory. Of course, I was rooting for Greg Kirkfleet, but as Michigan puts it, it's a well-deserved moment, and you like seeing that. He's been denied so many times by Gable Steveson that this was finally his time to get the job done, and we rounded the corner at 125 pounds. Was Matt Ramos, the guy who upset Spencer Lee, was he able to beat Pat Glory? Ultimately, no, he was not. I didn't think it was going to happen, which, I don't know. Do you think that makes it worse for Spencer that the guy he lost to didn't win the national title and that Glory won instead? I was really looking forward to the Glory Spencer Lee matchup. Didn't end up getting that, but we did see Pat Glory win a national title, the first national champion of Princeton since 1951. Of course, him and Quincy Monday both made the finals last year, which way it's a historic year as well, but he was so happy to actually win that title as well. He won 4-1 in the finals over Matt Ramos, and I'll say this, Ramos, while he lost that match, he was in it until the end, and he is a funky wrestler. The way he was just scrambling around, Pat Glory was the aggressor the entire match. He was going at Ramos that entire time. However, Ramos was able to defend with such ease at times, and the way that the many times that he went to his back was just shocking to me. I couldn't believe that happened. Now, speaking of shocking, did you see this coming? If you saw his semifinals match against Dayton Fix, you probably did, but Vito Arujau pulled off a victory over Roman Bravo Young. He came out firing right from the bat. This wasn't a close match, and to me, this was the match of the night. My favorite match by a landslide, honestly. The way that these two wrestled, Vito Arujau came out. This was the second takedown that he earned on RBY, and let me just replay that, because this is coming straight off of an escape. So he escaped, went straight back in for a takedown on RBY, and took him almost to his back. He was that quick. Honestly, probably the quickest guy Spencer Lee has ever, or that RBY has ever wrestled. Just look at this. What a match that he had. The quick feet. Just RBY couldn't handle it. The final score of that match ended up being 10-4. Shockingly. And after coming off of a couple of tight finals matches that Fix and RBY have had, this was not the way I saw things shaking out. I never was overlooking Vito Arujau, but I didn't think he was going to be this dominant. And to me, he is the outstanding wrestler of the tournament. Beating a guy who was going for his third NCAA title and beating him 10-4 with a dominant tournament at that. That's why I give him the edge over Mason Parris for OW, just because of the fact that he beat a guy who was going for his third title, which is kind of a historic thing. And at 141, not necessarily a historic match or anything like that, and it was kind of the teaser as we got into the last match at 149, right? The penultimate match of the night was Andrew Alvarez of Northern Colorado. What a victory that he had over Real Woods. One of the crazy things that happened in this, and ridiculous things at that, was the 14-minute it took to review a call about whether there were back points or not. And watching this over in the replay, I actually didn't think that he had 4 back points. It was close. Like, I thought maybe it was like 2 separate counts or something like that. Maybe you disagree. Totally fine. I know you don't disagree on the fact that this match, or that call that took so long to look at, was insane. Like, let's have a cap on that. Like, let's make a decision. Let's move on. It just ruins the momentum. Now, granted, it did give the guys a lot of rest time, and Alvarez, like, he threw Woods to his back, and that was impressive, right? He did end up getting the call go his way, and he was psyched, man. Like, from the beginning of the season, he is another undefeated wrestler, knocking off the #1 ranked at the beginning of the year in Cole Matthews of Pitt, who surprisingly didn't even make the stand. I mean, there were a lot of guys who just weren't able to make it between him and Mickey Philippi, but I'm also happy with the guys who did make the stand, like Max Murin finally making the stand for the first time. Like, it's the stories like that that I really, really like. But the real story that stood out, of course, of the entire event that we all looked forward to was Yianni Diakomahalis of Cornell going for his 4th NCAA title. And I'll tell you this, like, yeah, you see him lock up this cradle on Sammy Sasso, who I was looking for Sasso to do the reverse to him. He did not. But Yianni Diakomahalis ended up with a victory over Sasso. And Sasso wrestled a strong match against the Big Red Cornell, Yianni D. But Yianni D was just wrestling too smart. You know, he wasn't going to let that happen. I thought maybe he was close on a couple of shots, but ultimately, yeah, Yianni is the guy that you just weren't going to be able to beat this year. He goes down not only as a 4-timer for himself, but also as Cornell's 2nd 4-timer, the only school to have 2 4-timers. You saw Kyle Dake there on the sidelines. Now, next year becomes very interesting because Carter Sirachi and Aaron Brooks both won this year, they can become 4-timers together next year, becoming the Penn State's first 4-timers, but also they could become the 2nd school with 2 4-timers, which is insane. And yes, Penn State ran away with the team race, having their largest margin of victory of all time for the Nittany Lions. They defeated Iowa by, 55 points, 137.5 to 82.5. Cornell finished in 3rd, Ohio State in 4th, and Mizzou in 5th. It was a great tournament, but who gets the Hodge Trophy? Well, the person who I think is going to get the Hodge Trophy is going to be more like going into this tournament. It could have been Spencer. It could have been RBY. Clearly, it's not going to be them now, but I think they're going to go more off of this on a Lifetime Achievement Award. I know it's supposed to be looking at this season. It's supposed to be looking at your wins and losses, your undefeated record, and that's usually, that is the first criteria, but it's hard to discount Yianni D winning his 4th title without giving him that Hodge Trophy. Now, if you want to learn some more about the other 4-time NCAA champions, I put together this video here talking all about them, because now you know that Yianni is one of them. And thank you for joining me all season long here on Fanco Wrestling.